Hello and welcome to a brand new movie review from the Nerdpocalypse. I'm your host, Jay. I'm here with Brad.
What's up?
All right, guys, we're back. This is our review of War for the Planet of the Apes.
We find ourselves on the eve of battle against these beasts. And years from now, you can tell your children, I fought to protect this world. This is our last stand. And if we lose, it will be a planet of apes.
Okay, so obviously this is the third film in the Planet of the Apes trilogy that starring Andy Serkis as Caesar, which he's really good.
Yes.
At playing an ape.
Yeah, quick side note, Andy Serkis, I think, is probably the most underrated actor in Hollywood. I think that's a fair point to make.
Yeah, no, I think it is. Like, because you never see that guy. And it's just like, oh, what is he covered in now? Oh, he's an ape. Oh, he's Smeagol. You know, like, this poor guy never gets to show his face. He's amazing. So. Yeah, he's really great. Like, he's literally kind of started an entire genre of acting, which is just amazing. So we saw this movie. Brad, your initial impressions?
So I hadn't seen any of the new Planet of the Apes films before this. I did watch the second one right before we watched this one.
Right.
And so when you get a film that ends the way the second one did, with, you know, this conflict being, you know, truly and well sparked, and then you go into a movie that's called War for the Planet of the Apes, you're expecting a specific type of film.
Right, exactly.
And that is not the film that this is whatsoever. It takes what you think is going to be like this big spectacle, this huge like war movie, and actually turns it into this very specific character-driven story about Caesar and his family, which I did not expect going in, which was a nice, pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
And probably lent itself to a much better film than we would have got with this like colossal, you know, war spectacle going in.
I agree. So yeah, definitely the title gives a very different impression to what you get. And I don't think you're saying this like not as a bad thing at all. Like,
no, it's like I said, the film was a pleasant surprise to get something that was so emotionally charged and driven by the characters and not driven like the conflict between the human and the apes is not only more of a backdrop, it's not even really in the film. Like, it actually, the big brunt of that takes place before this movie starts, because there's, I think the movie said, a 5-year gap between the end of Dawn and the beginning of War.
Right.
And most of the big battles and infighting have happened in that time. And instead you get kind of like the apes holding on to,
it's the last stand,
right? That for them to try to hold on, and then it becomes this very different story where Caesar, you know, gets, you know, they hit you hard earlier in the film with something that's really unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it shifts the tone of the film and the focus on him and his journey, basically.
Yeah. Now, by the way, we didn't mention this is directed by Matt Reeves, obviously starring Andy Serkis, and also co-starring Woody Harrelson, who plays this crazy last stand general who's like, this is, you know, our true war for the planet of the apes. You know, he delivers that ridiculous line in the trailer, thankfully not in the actual movie, because it seemed super cheesy. But all in all, I thought this movie was really great. Like, it is incredibly character driven. It really does take the time to not just do this idea of like explosions, and that's it, everybody. Like,
right.
Very smart.
The action is actually really restrained in the movie.
Right. I mean, it really, like, the big balls to the wall war stuff doesn't really come until the third act.
Right.
Right. And again, that's not to say that the movie is boring or anything like that. The movie is fucking riveting. Like, in getting to that point, and the characters that you've known since the beginning, which is pretty wild, right? Like, because you never saw the first one, which I think is a largely forgettable movie, right? Which I like. I enjoyed the first one with James Franco. It was fine. The second one, when Matt Reeves came in, that's where that series took off. It was like, okay, this is like, if you told me that Dawn was the first of a trilogy, that would make more sense than Rise. Right.
Well, and it doesn't have to necessarily stop here either. Like,
no, well, the original was like
open-ended, right? 5 films, I think.
5 or 6 films, movies. Right? So yeah, there's a lot there, and there's a lot more of that story to tell. Which I hope eventually they kind of get to the original Planet of the Apes, which is like some dude comes down. And he's like, "Oh,
You blew it up."
Yeah, like, you bastards. You know, like I kind of hope is maybe the culmination of things, which would be kind of cool to see how they pull that off. But yeah, it really is such a character-driven film, and Caesar is such a compelling character. It cannot be overstated how good Andy Serkis is as this character. Like it's absolutely amazing. So before we get into, more details, again, we're not going to do any spoilers or anything, like we normally do. So what is your out of 5 score for this?
Do we do half stars?
Yeah, 5 stars.
I'm gonna say 3.5.
3.5
is what I'm gonna say, because it was a solid film. It's worth watching. I don't know that I need to ever necessarily see it again.
Right.
But it was definitely 2 hours well spent. Like Jay said, I enjoyed the movie thoroughly, and I'll tell you, like you mentioned, Matt Reeves directed it, and if this was if you go into this film knowing, hey, this guy's going to direct Batman coming up here soon, and you want to kind of get a sense for what that's going to look like, I think that is probably going to be in pretty good hands. So
yeah, like in a lot of ways, because this is so character driven. Because I've been thinking about I like these Planet of the Apes movies anyway, and I was like super excited for this. But then knowing that Reeves is going to go to Batman, it's interesting because you can't help but to look at the movie through that lens. Like, okay, like how is he going to approach this? If it is as character driven as this movie is, you're likely going to get another Nolan
right. That's what I'm saying. It reminds me a lot of that.
Right, sure. And look, fine with it, okay? Like, I don't need Batman to be a mindless idiot punching things. I need Batman to be a story about a psychopath, basically, who has some really twisted views on the world and delving into that character. And I think Nolan did a really good job in that, and I think Reeves will do a similar way. Now, what his take on Batman will be is a different story, but it will definitely be more character-driven. So you're saying 3.5?
3.5 out of 5.
Okay, I'm going to go high. I'm going 4.5. I think this is a fucking excellent movie. This is the best blockbuster I've seen this year.
Okay,
right? Because
you've seen more than me, so
yeah.
I will say I like, not that they're comparable at all, but I did enjoy this movie better than Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman was great. So.
Yeah. You know what? I would agree with you actually. Like this movie is structured in a way that it is not just a good blockbuster movie. This is a damn good movie.
Right. It
really is.
It does toe the line. And I mean, calling it an art house film is way too hyperbolic, probably, but it definitely has a lot more of those tendencies than your typical summer blockbuster would.
Right, exactly. And again, if you liked Dawn, then this is right there. Like it is in line with that. It's not like, wow, this is so drastically different.
Well, but I even think that like this movie was a lot more introspective than Dawn was. Like Dawn still had a lot more of like the visceral action that and this was much more not psychological, but it was much more of an emotional film, I think, than Dawn was for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, let's talk about this a little bit. One of the things I really dug about this movie is in the previous one, in Dawn, they alluded, at least from my perspective, they made a lot of sort of alluding moment to the struggle of the apes, very similar to the struggle of like minority, especially black people in America, right? Like there's a couple of things you're just like, yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that seems familiar. Reeves doesn't just touch on that this time. He goes full bore. And I don't want to talk about spoilers, but there are moments you're just like, okay, wow, like they're not even fucking around and like touching on the edges of like these similarities. Like they're like right into it. And I thought that was super interesting and ballsy.
I would agree with you there for sure.
Yeah. What did you think of Woody Harrelson in this movie?
I think he's definitely fun thought exercise. Like go back and tell like
Cheers.
Go back and tell like your 20 years ago self. Like you see this guy Woody Harrelson, he's actually gonna be one of like the best character actors that we have
in his generation.
In 2015. And you'll say, oh, you're full of it. What are you talking about?
What? Woody from Cheers, that idiot? Yeah. The guy who got busted smoking weed and hitting bongos or whatever. Like, that guy. But yeah, he's really fucking good.
And to be fair, like, it's funny that because he's playing he's playing an archetype like that. The character, his character, the Colonel, is a character that you've seen in several movies before. It's not an original character, but he does do it very well. He does it with the correct amount of menace, I guess, and insanity. Yes, for the role.
Yeah, his character is interesting because everything in this movie is very everything is like very deliberate and just like, this is what Caeser is thinking. This is what these other characters are thinking. You know, these other characters introduced. Everything is very deliberate. And Woody Harrelson is the fucking wild card. And he just comes in and he's like, I'm gonna do all this crazy shit. And you're just like, what are you doing, Woody Harrelson? Like, but it's perfect in this universe that is so stressed, and everyone is like, you know, everyone is very serious and everything else. And he's a very serious character. He's not like a screwball character or anything, but he is just balls to the wall. And he just doesn't give a shit about like, oh, maybe we should be more reasonable in this moment. He's like, no.
And the thing that his character does very well is he's able to, like, he's not a raving lunatic. He's very calm. And there's a point where in the film where him and Caeser are talking to one another, and he alludes to an event that happened early in the film, and he does it with absolutely no emotion when his voice when it's the like could be the biggest thing in the other character's world. Yeah, and he's just like,
for me, it was a Tuesday.
Right. That's actually a very good.
He fucking bisoned it.
Right. Yeah, bisoned it for sure.
Right.
So he was very good. Yeah, I liked him a lot. I don't know. I mean, they could have gotten other actors to play that role. Like, I don't think that Woody Harrelson being in the role made the role, because again, the character is a type that he was playing. But he did a very good job for sure.
Yeah. No, I absolutely thought he was. He had a way about him that just absolutely worked. And that scene that you're talking about is really great, because he's just like, I don't really care.
Well, and even,
this is the thing I needed to get done.
And even the subtle stuff. And again, this is where Reeves comes through. Where, you know, in the morning, his troops are out in front of him. You know, doing chants and stuff like that, and he's just chilling on this balcony, shaving his head with like a knife, basically. And just doing his thing. Like, and that's those character beats I love, because they're kind of like a window into their soul that you kind of get.
Yeah,
and that's where they really shine through.
Yeah, it feels like a very like Apocalypse Now moment or something.
Well, they were very, like, if you weren't sure if that's the kind of vibe they were going for with the humans in the movie, they hit you in the face with that.
A couple times. Yeah, so. It was like, this seems familiar. Yeah. I like the story. I liked the action beats of the story. Again, I feel like it cannot be overstated how good the CGI is. Like, you legitimately forget that they didn't train apes.
There were a couple parts.
Yeah,
where it was obvious, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, you're right, for the most part, and especially in like the parts that it's most obvious is actually when there's only one or two CGI components on the screen. The parts where like all of the apes are going looks,
it's seamless.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I am really curious as to what acting in quotes looks like in 30 years, because then you can have humans play anything.
Well, I mean, you see it in gaming a lot of times too, like a lot of motion capture stuff that goes on with video games where you have people in mocap suits that are actually acting the roles out, but then they can transpose it onto whatever scene they want. You know,
right? Exactly. So, yeah, it's wild. And these ape movies get a lot of, you know, people are like, yeah, I know CGI is good. Yeah, and this one, like, I found myself a couple times, I was like, wow, these apes are really well trained. Oh wait, this is not real. Like, it's kind of, and it's kind of interesting. But one of the things I like is they do a good job of, like, the overarching point of the movie to me was, as the world is coming to this culmination, right? As this war for the planet of the apes is happening, the apes are gaining humanity and the humans are losing theirs, which I thought was a really interesting, in more than one way. I don't want to spoil anything, but like, it is super interesting where it's like the apes are like more compassionate and more forgiving and like not just complete raving animals, and the humans are just like, kill fucking everything. Like, fuck humanity, it doesn't matter, we just have to survive. And And that's a super interesting concept. What did you think of that?
I didn't think about that before, but now that you mention it, it's actually sort of not a cautionary tale per se, but definitely probably a theme that's introduced on purpose in the film. I would definitely say for sure.
Yeah.
The one thing that I want to talk about that I was really impressed by with this film was the score for the movie.
Yes, it was very good.
But not only was it good, but so there's not a ton of dialogue in the film. And more to the point, there's not a ton of like exposition dialogue in the movie, but the score was the score in this film, more than most films that I can think of, almost acts as like the narrator for the film.
Yeah,
and like to the point where like in a lot of the action sequences when bullets start firing, like you'll hear the sound of the bullets, but then they will fade away, and all you'll get is like a musical interlude that's kind of like a window into the emotion of the characters, or kind of like sets the scene.
Right.
And it's important in any film, but it's especially important in this film where most of the apes obviously don't talk. Like Caesar is the only ape that speaks. Well, him and Bad Ape, I guess, are the only apes that speak. Him,
Bad Ape, who's a new ape that you get introduced to, and then I can't remember the other one, the big orange one.
Maurice.
Yeah. Maurice.
Yeah.
Right.
So it is important to have even that. It's even more of a focus, and they've really like between the score itself and the direction and the editing with the film, they really nailed it. And it's almost like the score in this film feels almost like another character in the movie.
I agree. Now, one of the things I did notice before we get out of here that I thought was really interesting, I meant to mention this to you after we watched it. They used a lot of, and I'd have to go back and watch the original Planet of the Apes movies, but they used a lot of moments in the score or just sort of like sound effects.
There was also
very
visual illusion too, because the Alpha Omega symbol that the characters was also the same ones that were on the bomb from the earlier films.
Right. No, but what I was saying is like this idea of these very 70s. I guess you could call it part of the score. These very 70s sound structures and things like that they use, which felt like an homage to the originals, which I thought was kind of cool. It's very interesting.
Well, and it's fun for them to have to pay, like when they're paying homage to the originals, because the original ones are so goofy, like they're so
super goofy,
right? Like they're so out there. So to be able to pay tribute to that without lowering the quality of this film, definitely speaks to.
I mean, ironically, people talk about reboots, blah, blah, blah. No, this was a reboot that not only needed to happen, it absolutely is better than the originals.
Without a doubt. And also, like, we don't even have to speak about the failed reboot from the early 2000s.
Fucking Tim Burton, holy shit. That movie. Look, the costuming was pretty cool, but that movie was bad.
And like I said, even though I only gave the movie 3.5 stars, I can't think of any, like, overt criticisms that I have about the film. It's just like I said, it's one of those ones you see one time, and I'd recommend that you see it, but I don't need to watch it again. Like I don't feel like there's a lot that I missed on the first viewing.
Right. I would agree with that. Yeah. Like everything is pretty like right there. Yeah, there's not like, ooh, what's the secret meaning?
Right.
No, there's no secret meaning. Like this is fucked up and these people are trying to survive.
Exactly.
So but all in all, I think I said 4.5, Brad said 3.5. That's an average of 4. That's a pretty good fucking get, especially for the third movie in a series, right? Because that's normally where that dip.
That's usually where the quality dips off. But like you said, this feels, ironically enough, this feels almost like the second act of a trilogy, which usually is the best of the trilogy.
You know what? Honestly, I think it's the best of the 3.
I don't take my, even though I haven't seen the first one, I can't argue with you too much on that. Yeah. And again, if they do decide to,
it's certainly better than the first one.
Certainly better. It'll be interesting to see where they take it if they do decide to continue making them, because the way this one ended is certainly is going to have the franchise going a specific direction.
Yeah.
So it'll be curious to see, and I'll look forward to see if they do end up putting out any other ones down the road.
All right, there you go, guys. That is our review for War for the Planet of the Apes. We'll see you next time.
That was awesome.